proudly declared that they had invested in AIFs and were winding it down. So, what does this exactly mean? And what were these NBFCs up to via this intriguing sounding route of investments? I reached out to Jyoti Prakash Gadia, Managing Director at Resurgent India, an investment bank, and I began by asking him to define, firstly, what an AIF was in this context and what the Reserve Bank of India was cracking down on.
I will just explain to you in detail. Let me start explaining you what this AIF concept is all about. AIF is like a special purpose vehicle where there is not so much of rules and regulations which are governed by the Reserve Bank of India or the SEBI guidelines for the NPA norms which are getting implemented in AIF actually. AIF make their own rules and regulations when their account will be termed NPA, where they can invest money, what sort of asset class they can invest in. SEBI has just broadly categorized that it can be AIF1, AIF2 or AIF3 category depending upon the asset class where you can invest and whether you want to raise debt or not against those funding that you are trying to do. So there is some broader guidelines applicable, but there is no minor guidelines. So all those nitty-gritties and operational issues are being framed by the AIF management itself, which are the investment managers who are managing that fund. It is like a type of a mutual fund where all the investors or the HNIs, they generally give money to the investment manager, where investment manager goes and pitch up their case. I am going to invest in this type of asset classes. This would be my investment rationale. This is the investment return. This would be the horizon of my AIF and everything. And in case if those HNIs or the investors are convinced about the capability and the investment theme of that, we call it as a general partners or those investment managers, then those HNIs give that money. And this is the way that all the AIFs are created and they give money with. So this is on a broader aspect. Now what was happening? Now suppose I give you an instant case, what is now happening? Now suppose if an NBFC or a bank has an NP asset. Now suppose if I make an AIF, bank will come and say me, Jyoti, you have an AIF, I will give you money in that AIF. But what you will do with that money that I'm giving you as an AIF, you purchase my NP asset and you keep it in your books of account. And as an AIF, I don't have to follow that 180 days guidelines or SMA1, SMA2, SMA3 guidelines, which was happening. Basically, this problem didn't arise more from the nationalized bank. This problem arose more from the NBFC angle. What the NBFCs were basically doing was that the NBFCs, in case if their account become an NP account, then those NBFCs will create an AIF, maybe through a different management structure or maybe through friends or maybe through any other AIF who has gone. Those AIF must have approached those NBFCs. Brother, why don't you invest in my AIF? So NBFC will say, okay, I will invest in your AIF, provided you purchase this asset after you have raised the money from me. So it is basically parking of those NP assets to an AIF structure where that asset can be parked through 5-year, 8-year, 10-year down the road, and thereafter the AIF can write off the asset slowly and gradually depending upon that management principle which was happening there. So this was an opaque book basically, and this NPA recognition norm, since it was not applicable to AIF, what the NBFC used to do, NBFC अपने books में क्या दिखाती थी? NBFC used to show that this much is the investment which I hold in my AIF, and AIF, since they have not recognized that asset as an NPA asset, so their net asset value was always high because the valuation of the asset that the AIF was holding, it is basically as per the net asset value. And since AIF has not recognized that as an NPA, so they have not diminished the value of that investment. Like, so suppose if they have purchased a 100 rupees asset, which is an NPA asset, which practically should have been recorded at zero value, but AIF record in their books of account, they will record it at 100 rupees. So their NAV value will always show 100 rupees. And in that NBFC, since they have invested in that AIF, they will always show that as an investment, my 100% investment is intact, it is as per the market value. So everything was going on very, very good. NBFC, they were not having any problem because they don't have to write off the books of account. And this AIF, since AIF structure is like that, they also get money from the NBFC structure. So everything was going on fine.
So conceptually, you're saying, but there was a problem with that part of the loan, right? Even while it may have been transferred to the AIF, the fact is that that part of that loan or that part of the book had gone bad, isn't it?
Correct. Absolutely correct. there can be two situations. One, there can be already an NPA return account, or it can be an SMA 1-2 account, or NBFC can foresee that this account will become bad in next 6 months of time.
So now the Reserve Bank is saying that you can't do this and you can't have this kind of downstream investment. So what is the outcome of this going to be? I mean, what will NBFCs have to do?
I will just explain in detail what RBI has now come up. RBI is saying NBFC or bank, they cannot invest in the unit of those AIF in case if those AIF is reinvesting again in the asset of those any of those assets where same bank or NBFC has lended money to. It means there cannot be any round tripping. It means NBFC, if they have invested to a borrower A, and NBFC has lended money in AIF B, suppose. So now AIF B cannot invest in borrower A. This is the guideline which says.
Many of the NBFCs having to now reveal their investments in AIFs which have such exposure and therefore having to now unload?
Absolutely. I think so. There will be like 2 or 3 bigger NBFCs in the country. Definitely, since whatever that they have formed in terms of an AIF structure and they have parked the bad loan in some way or the other into that AIF. So now RBI is saying either NBFC has to sell those assets or those units within 30 days, or AIF has to dispose of that asset, or AIF has to recognize that asset. It means either the value of that AIF investment will go down, or otherwise the NBFC or bank which is holding those units, they have to sell those units within next 30 days of time frame. So you will see that there will be a lot of hunky-dory which is going to happen in this next 30 days, where a lot of AIF investment value will come down, and 3-4 NBFCs, wherever those investments are there, definitely those they have to come out clean with that. And I think so, unofficially, I know that this is going on for last 1 year, so it was about to come at any point of time.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And that's sort of my last question because some names are already coming out. So is the Reserve Bank reacting because it feels the problem is something has already happened and some other bigger default is likely to happen? Or is it just anticipating that this is a method that's not ideal or that's it's not appropriate and therefore, cracking down in this manner?
NBFC is a regulated body by Reserve Bank of India, and AIF is a regulated body by SEBI. Practically, what has happened, these are the two different institutions, practically governed by two different governors or two different institutions. So problem has occurred because since there was no one governing authority for both the institutions. So this is basically the root cause of the problem. But when the RBI came to know this problem, that this can be a problem area happening, so I think so RBI and the SEBI has both sat together and tried to form some new rules and regulations. That should be the way forward for AIF. I think so Reserve Bank of India and SEBI should form a joint committee in making the rules and regulations for AIF and for any of the fundraising entity going for further, sir. It can't be कि सर SEBI कुछ नियम अलग बना रहा है और RBI कुछ नियम अलग बना रहा है, sir. It can't be in isolation, both of them, sir.
Right. And SEBI had pointed this out earlier as well. And now Reserve Bank has stepped in. Jyoti Gadia, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Govind.